Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Arlette Hart, Senior Cybersecurity Technologist at Leidos. I want to jump right in here, Arlette, if I can. I was reading a study at ISC2, and they said that by 2020, there'll be 1.8 million cybersecurity jobs unfilled,
That's amazing.
And that's what I talk about today. I talk about your company and people applying for jobs there and what your offering is. And because I teach at Georgetown in the graduate school there, I deal with students all the time who are considering applying at your company. And what they tell me is
to my company.
they should.
Yes.
And so they say, John, I'm concerned about training and mentorship and apprenticeship. So I'll just ask you. So where do you stand as far as those three categories go?
So, okay, let's talk about training and apprenticeship and mentorship, like first, and then I actually want to segue into another piece of this conversation because when I think apprenticeship, I think interns, and at first, how do you get in? How do you get your feet in the door to be an intern? How do you really get started in the cybersecurity field? Because I think it actually is kind of a high bar. You have to be good at cybersecurity, or you have to have proven yourself. We have a lot of internships. We pull people in across the board, and we actually rotate them through a bunch of cybersecurity disciplines because that helps them really understand what cybersecurity means. It sounds so daunting, cybersecurity, and it sounds like one big monolithic thing, but it's a whole bunch of disciplines that work together to create a secure infrastructure. There's engineering, there's forensics, there's actually watching and looking for incidents themselves, there's identifying and remediating, and then there's the programmatics around it. So there's a whole world of things. So we try and get people exposed to the range of activities that go with cybersecurity. And we do that for people coming out of college and do that sort of as apprenticeships and also as mentors. So when we bring people in, we make sure that they are hooked up with somebody who can help them get up and running quickly. But even within the organization, when people transition, we bring them from one discipline and say, okay, here we want to make sure that as you are moving into cybersecurity, you get exposed to what cybersecurity holistically is. So we bring them in and rotate them through sort of a leadership development program so that we rotate them through all the different components of cybersecurity so they get a feel for the whole discipline. I think that's really important. And it kind of goes hand in hand with training and mentorship too. It's funny because a lot of the emphasis on training is, can I take a class in this and that and the other thing, which is really important. But I think the most important thing about cybersecurity is it's really fun to do. And really getting your feet on the ground and doing it is the part that's important. And it's like, so yes, we need to have training to support the work itself, but the work is the part that's really fun. It's funny, I was thinking this morning, people do become, civil engineers, and they get a lot of training in civil engineers. And there's obviously a lot of disciplines related to civil engineers. But the biggest part of civil engineers is go build the bridge, And it's like, this is the same thing with cybersecurity. It's like, do the stuff. That's where it gets really interesting. And there's a ton of things that no training course is going to give you. That said, we are focused on training and focused on making sure that people are capable of doing the jobs that it is that they need to do. But I want to make sure that the focus really isn't, can I get trained? The focus is this job the right job for you? And is it a really good job? Because I got hooked on cyber, and it's like I never walked away. So that's kind of my take on it. We do apprentice. We do all of those things, and we want to attract people to the discipline itself. But the discipline itself, to me, is what's most appealing.
I'm going to toss out another fun fact and see what you have to say about it. Recent studies showed that 87% of today's cybersecurity professionals started off in a completely different field. And so should people from a wide range of fields apply to your organization, or do you agree with that? Or why would that figure even come up?
Well, they had to because cybersecurity didn't
it would
exist.
Make sense, wouldn't it?
It's like when I went to school, there was no such thing.
Yeah, 1960,
as
I studied cloud security. What?
yeah. It's like I don't believe your resume. Oh wait, but it by definition, I'm a political science person, and I'm in cybersecurity, so clearly there is room for a lot of liberal arts people in the cybersecurity discipline. The intelligence world is also key to cybersecurity, and the insider threat and intelligence are really heavy in the liberal arts questions. But even the forensics and the other pieces, that's a learned skill. Most of these are learned skills. That's not a piece where you have automatically, walked into a thing and say, oh, I absolutely know how to do this thing because I was born with it. None of these things are things you're born with. So if you're interested, give it a shot. One thing I would say to every human being who is in school right now is take a programming course. Learn how to program. To me, this is the writing of tomorrow. This is what writing used to be, which you still need to learn how to write, don't get me wrong, but programming is the piece that is really important. And that gets you also the first step into a cybersecurity discipline. So I think there's a lot of room for a lot of people in this discipline. I think no matter what your background is, it's worth looking at because there's so many aspects to it that have tangential connections to other disciplines that it's really, and besides, again, I think it's a fascinating field.
Yeah, it's really an analytical skill. One of the best cybersecurity professionals I've known majored in ecological science at UVA because he could take disparate data sets and analyze them in a complex manner. Well, that's the skill set that's exactly the same skill set. You can just use different terminology.
It's exactly the same skill set, yes. And when you're doing research to write a paper, you're pulling a bunch of different pieces of information together. This is what you do when you're building cases in cybersecurity. Because
no one can predict what the next attack venue is going to be. They're changing all the time. And so if you don't have that adaptability and the ability to take new sets of data and analyze them, you're going to be left 3 weeks behind, even 2 days behind.
You can't even tell what the next technology is going to be. And each technology brings its own set of threats. So
if you enjoy analysis and complex problem solving, then you could be a philosophy major and be good at this, or a ecology science major, or anything, as long as they have the ability to adapt to new situations.
Absolutely, yes.
Great. We're going to pause here for a short break. My guest today is Arlette Hart, Senior Cybersecurity Technologist at Leidos. I'm your moderator, John Gilroy, on the discussion, Solving the Cyber Puzzle, From Trust to Talent. Sponsored by Leidos on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com.